First tonight, that big story that we are tracking, another Uri-like attack has taken place in the early hours this morning in the Kashmir Valley. Terrorists today attacked an army garrison in the Panzgam area in Kupwara district. The attack was launched in the wee hours this morning. At least 3 army personnel, including a captain rank officer Ayush Yadav and a JCO, have been martyred. The army was able to take out 2 terrorists, but one is still on the loose. It's our top story tonight.
April 27, 2017, 4:30 a.m. At the crack of dawn, 3 suspected Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists sneak into an army garrison in Panzgam, Kupwara. Armed with 3 weapons, 2 GPS devices, 1 smartphone and a matrix map of the area, the terrorists cut the outer perimeter fence and enter the officers' complex. Soon, a fierce gun battle ensues. Captain Ayush Yadav killed in his sleep. 2 other soldiers killed with grenades. 1 terrorist escapes, 2 others neutralized. As the search for the 3rd terrorist continued, there was an attempt to foil the operations by some stone pelters who materialized at the spot. People who should answer this inconsolable father.
गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसी सुधारनी पड़ेगी, नहीं तो ऐसे ही मरवाते रहेंगे. कभी आपके सुकमा में मरवा देंगे नक्सलियों से, कभी कहीं मरवा देंगे. कोई एक्शन तो ले, हर बार एक्शन लेंगे ये चलता है, लेकिन कोई ठोस कार्रवाई नहीं करना चाहते ये लोग.
सरकार से क्या अपील है आपकी?
सरकार से कोई अपील नहीं, कोई उम्मीद भी नहीं.
Politicians are now singing the familiar tune of condemnation and future action. What makes the Kupwara attack even more shocking is its eerie similarities to this. 18 September 2016, Pakistani terrorists attacked an army camp in Uri, leaving 21 soldiers dead. Not just Uri, through the past year, our forces have been constantly under attack from Pakistan.
Since early morning, this entire area has been clearly tense because of the gunfight that took place. What we have been given to understand is that around 4:45 is when these militants stormed into the camp. They fired indiscriminately and then both of them were killed. The army says that they are still carrying out searches. There were quick reaction teams that were brought in and that entire operation was carried out. Even as we speak, the entire area remains tense. With cameraman Roof Shujaul Haq in Kupwara for India Today.
More jawans killed, a captain killed, but there is a Kupwara hero as well. Despite being shot and injured in the head, this soldier fired back and chased and killed 2 terrorists. Gunner Rishi Kumar from Bihar's Ara district was on sentry duty when the firefight started. He used his presence of mind, picked up a gun when he saw Captain Ayush Yadav being targeted by the terrorists. The terrorist bullet hit Rishi Kumar's headgear. He fell down, but that didn't stop him. He got up again, fired back, killing the 2 terrorists. The attack on the army camp is the 2nd one since India's surgical strikes in POK in September last year. The strikes were meant to deter Pakistan from launching any more terror attacks. But Islamabad is not getting the message. The attack puts the spotlight on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Kashmir and Pakistan policy, which clearly at the moment seems to be in some kind of disarray.
It started with an attack on the airbase in Pathankot, and then a repeat in Uri where 21 soldiers were killed in an attack on an army camp. Terrorists aided and abetted by Pakistan, getting bolder in their methods and more ambitious in their selection of targets. Terror attacks right under the nose of the army. That too when the BJP is in power both at the centre and in Jammu and Kashmir, which many saw as a rare chance to break new ground in the valley. But contrary to expectations, Kashmir is proving to be the Achilles heel of the Narendra Modi security establishment. Right after the Uri attack, India responded in kind, launching a surgical strike deep inside Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, inflicting heavy casualties. But the government's handling of the situation after the strikes left much to be desired. top leaders of the party that included then Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar, and at times the Prime Minister himself bragged about the strikes, with the undesirable result of dividing the polity.
30 years of boiling within, and the steam that had accumulated was vented off on 29th October when Indian Army, keeping in its tradition, it has a long tradition, we don't take credit for surgical strikes. But I think everyone should realize that it is government who takes decision, and that government needs to be cheered up for the decision which it took boldly.
देश का दुर्भाग्य है कि राजनीतिक स्वार्थ में डूबे हुए कुछ लोग सवाल या निशान खड़ा करने लग गए। क्या सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक हुआ था क्या? वो कह रहे थे मोदी जरा सबूत दो, सबूत।
The gains from the surgical strikes were exploited in the election battlefield of Uttar Pradesh, while nothing changed in the actual border battle in Kashmir. Pakistan is still the terror exporter it was, turning the terror tap on and off at will and making full use of the political disenchantment in the valley. Modi's Pakistan policy is a riddle. He started with an invite to Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to his swearing-in ceremony in 2014, then scrapped talks over the Pakistan envoy's invite to Hurriyat leaders. He dropped in to meet Nawaz Sharif uninvited on his birthday while returning from a trip to Afghanistan, and then stopped all contact altogether. Modi's strength in foreign policy was his unpredictability, but that unpredictability has now become a little too predictable, with ramifications for internal security. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me raise some big questions that the government of the day will have to answer. Why are our army camps becoming soft targets? Is internal security a weakness in Narendra Modi's agenda of governance? Is the Modi government really as tough on terror as it is perceived to be? Importantly, why is there still no full-time defence minister? It's been more than a month since Mr. Parrikar went to Goa. Is the Modi government's Kashmir and Pakistan policy confused? What are the Modi government's options now in checking Jammu and Kashmir terror, now that even surgical strikes haven't had the desired impact? Joining me now, General VP Malik, former Chief of the Army Staff, Ajay Shukla, Strategic Affairs Expert, Sambit Patra, the National Spokesperson of the BJP, and Manish Tiwari, Senior Leader of the Congress, who writes on internal security. I want to come to you, General Malik, first. As a former Army Chief, how do you look at these attacks that now repeatedly seem to be taking place on Army camps? Are they simply soft targets, or do you believe in the age of the Fidayeens, there's very little that the Army and indeed the government can do?
No, I don't believe that these armies become a soft target. But let me make two quick points. Firstly, the army is today fighting, having a very difficult mission, having to combat the Fidayeen and the Pakistani army across the line of control to ensure that there is no infiltration. And then, which has now become even more difficult, is the situation inside the valley, where, as you said, your commentator said, that there is greater alienation and therefore there is no intelligence coming, and the situation has become more difficult. I have myself experienced that whenever there is weak governance and there is a poor law and order situation, you will always have more such incidents taking place, whether it is along the border, along the LOC, right, or inside. So I don't believe that the army has become soft target, but yes, I think we should expect more such incidents taking place in the days to come, particularly during the summer, and the army has to be fully prepared for it. Today's incident was, yes, we lost one captain. Unfortunately, we also lost 2 more jawans. But the satisfaction is that the 2 chaps who came, Fidayeens, they've been shot. Then they have not been able to do the kind of damage that took place in Uri.
Your initial comments are very worrying. You're saying this could be the first of many attacks this summer, and you're also questioning what you believe is the lack of governance at the moment in Kashmir. Before I come to the politicians, Ajay Shukla, I have before me the Campos Committee report. After the Pathankot attack last year in January, various recommendations were given, particularly to look at army camps, to ensure greater security for them, from perimeter security to install modern access control, increase the number of commandos available. None of those recommendations, or at least not all of those recommendations, we are told have been implemented. Many of them are gathering dust. Your response as someone who tracks this, have we simply not taken this as seriously as we should?
Rajdeep, while it is true that a lot of the Campos Committee reports have not, or the recommendations have not been implemented yet, I think that to compare the current attack, the attack that took place today, on a level par with the Uri attack is perhaps a little bit unfair. The Uri attack was far more a debacle. We suffered far greater casualties. We don't even know if we killed any Fidayeens or militants that had inflicted all those casualties. Whereas in this one, while we have lost 3 people, unfortunately, we have also managed to fob off the attack and kill 2 or 3 militants as well, and prevent them from getting into the camp and sort of taking a hostage situation or something like that. So I think that the problem is that while it is absolutely to be conceded that security can be improved in army camps, that even the casualties that have taken place today perhaps were avoidable in some sense, I think it must be taken note of that the army is now operating in a very, very difficult and vitiated political environment. You've got this new situation of people stone pelting, coming out when the army is engaged in operations with the Fidayeen, interrupting those operations, causing casualties on the army. This is something which has never taken place in Jammu and Kashmir before, and it is something which is extremely worrying. It is not of the army's own making. It is something that is there because of lack of political engagement. The Modi's government's sort of policy, as you've already brought out on Kashmir, remains a non-policy, and as long as this non-policy continues to vitiate the political environment and complicate the operational environment for the army, you're going to find it difficult to reach a zero casualty situation.
You know, given that, and I'm going to bring in my BJP representative at the end. I want to hear all the other sides first. Manish Tiwari, Ajay Shukla is pointing out towards the Kashmir policy. Now, a key element of the counter-insurgency tactics of the Modi government are described as the Doval Doctrine, named after the National Security Advisor of Mr. Modi. And the key elements are that India must not back down in the face of these totally murderous stone pelters, and therefore we need to make every effort, in a sense, to have the territorial advantage, and that the security forces are totally justified, in a sense, on taking on stone pelters and to ensure full territorial dominance in Kashmir. Do you believe that that policy is working or not on the ground?
Well, Rajdeep, the National Security Advisor, is a good man, but I don't think he would possibly want a doctrine named after him. In any case, this doctrine or the lack of it is not formally enunciated in any manner. But the fact remains that there is an internal dimension to the Kashmir situation, and there is an external dimension called Pakistan. And unfortunately, as Ajay Shukla and General Malik correctly brought out, there is a complete absence of any coherent policy with regard to both the external and the internal dimensions. And therefore, you have an internal drift in the situation whereby the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, after she comes out from a meeting with the Prime Minister, laments that we are where Mr. Vajpayee had left us. I think that, for the lack of a better word, was the most
what would you do differently, Mr. Tiwari?
For lack of a policy towards Kashmir.
What would you do differently, given the fact that you have a hostile neighbor which is sending in Fidayeen? What would you suggest that the government should do differently?
Rajdeep, I don't think there is anything very much which can be done qua Pakistan, except for bringing as much international pressure on it as possible in order to try and get it to change its behavior. But one thing which definitely can be addressed, is the internal drift. I think government would be well served to put in place a policy which engages with the broadest spectrum of stakeholders, because as Ajay was correctly pointing out, this is perhaps for the first time that we are having a situation where even girl students have turned into stone pelters, and therefore rather than try and be blasé about it and say that all those who are indulging in this activity are all agent provocators of Pakistan. Some of them possibly could be, a substantive part of them possibly could be, but I guess there is a need to have a political outreach, which
right.
even their PDP partner has been suggesting. I think that would be a good way to start to try and address the internal dimension of the situation.
We'll come to the Kashmir dimension in a moment, but just at the outset, Sambit Patra, two hard facts. This is a week where a terrible attack took place in Sukma in Chhattisgarh, and we found out and we knew that there was no full-time DG. For the last 2 months, there was no full-time DG. After the attack, the government now appoints a DG CRPF. We have a situation in Kupwara at a time when we don't have a full-time defense minister. Manohar Parrikar is back in the safety of Goa, and questions will be raised. A government which claims that it is a government tough on terror, which has internal security as a top priority, did not have a DG CRPF for 2 months and now doesn't have a full-time defense minister. I'm not saying these attacks would stop if there was a full-time defense minister, but surely it's a statement of intent if you had a defense minister who was 24/7.
So you're absolutely right, Rajdeep, when you say that had there been a defense minister, full-time defense minister, or a full-time DG when the Sukma attack took place, it does not mean that these attacks would not have taken place. What matters is the intent, and the statement of intent of this government is absolutely clear, that we want spending on defense, we want spending on internal security, which we have shown, that we want strong ways to prove that India is not a soft power but a hard power, and we would not take anything that comes our way lying low, which the government's intentions are absolutely clear on. Look at what the government
sir, with due regard, in September you launched surgical strikes claiming that this was a lesson to Pakistan. Clearly Pakistan continues to pour in terrorists. The statement of intent of September, the surgical strikes, was meant to end terror. You said demonetization would break the back of terror. That hasn't happened. I'm not trying to be too cynical. I'm only saying that sometimes the rhetoric doesn't match the reality on the ground. The reality is we are facing a grim situation in the valley because there is no political outreach.
Rajdeep, I have got your question. Let me answer this. Okay, thank you. Rajdeep, as far as you or the opposition parties questioning us, saying that, well, what happened to the demonetization? What after the surgical strike? Still we have the terror attacks. My answer is, fight against terrorism is not all or none phenomenon. That means you start the fight today with one means and tomorrow terrorism should end. By that logic, in fact, terrorism sponsored by Pakistan would have ended because India already fought 3 successful battles or wars with Pakistan. We had 1947, we had 1965, we have 1971. Bangladesh was niched out of Pakistan. That means Pakistan must have learned all its lesson in 1971. There should have been nothing wrong that the Pakistanis would have dared to do after 1971, after Bangladesh. And as far as Tom Toym is concerned, remember those posters that Indira ji had put up, that it is Ma Durga who has created Bangladesh. So please, let's not mix petty politics in these issues. If the Prime Minister spoke about the surgical strikes, it's not that the Pakistanis got instigated by the Prime Minister's speech and they decided, let's teach a lesson to Narendra Modi.
Should you not have a full-time? Should you not have a full-time defense minister and someone full-time in charge of J&K? Should you not have someone who's a full-time defense minister and someone who's full-time in charge of J&K? There's a sense of a vacuum and a drift when it comes to your Kashmir policy, and there is a sense that there is no leadership at the top of the defense ministry today.
No, absolutely wrong. As far as full-time leadership is concerned, for 10 years India saw a part-time prime minister. We don't not only have a full-time Prime Minister, we have a performing Prime Minister, we have a strong Prime Minister today. The message is absolutely clear. Manish was absolutely right when he said that as far as Pakistan is concerned, isolation is the answer. And today Pakistan has been isolated as never before. Not only in the home turf, not only in the neighbor where the SAARC countries in fact boycotted Pakistan, but
it's
also
having no impact on the ground.
Pakistan almost went to the extent of finding its way.
Can I get Manish to respond?
I gave you the example.
Mr. Tiwari, can you respond to that? Mr. Tiwari, can you respond? Sambit Patra claims the Narendra Modi government has isolated Pakistan.
May I?
Yes, Mr. Tiwari.
With great respect to my friend Sambit Patra, unfortunately, I said with great respect to my friend Sambit Patra, Rajdeep, unfortunately that is not correct. In fact, Pakistan is emboldened because it finds itself in a very strange sweet spot. Its relationship with China after the China-Pakistan economic corridor has acquired a strategic and an economic dimension. For the first time ever in the history of Pakistan and in the history of the erstwhile Soviet Union and Russia, you have joint military exercises between the Russian army and the Pakistani armed establishment. And because Donald Trump has not articulated a policy with regard to Afghanistan, and General Nicholson has been asking for a surge, Pakistan feels that once the surge takes place of American troops, it'll be back to business as normal between the United States of America and Pakistan. So therefore, we can be delusional about the fact that Pakistan is isolated. In fact, Pakistan possibly strategically feels that it has never been ever better placed before as it is today. That's the unfortunate reality.
The fact is the stone pelting on the ground, and both Ajay Shukla and General Malik referred to this at the start. General Malik, what would you do on the ground, given that many believe, and you said this at the start, that the situation in the valley is making the army's position more vulnerable? What would you do in a situation where you have young students throwing stones at the Indian forces? How does the army deal with it?
Rajdeep, with due respect to all the political parties, particularly those representatives that you have in the studio, I have to say this, that I hear more rhetoric, lesser attention, lesser coordination, and lesser situation on the ground, both at the center as well as at the state level. And particularly at the state level today, what we have been seeing is the total neglect of the law and order situation. And we have given a free hand to everybody, and we have got students alienated. Now, the first thing is that let's be firm. Law and order situation is the most important situation when it comes to governance. And in that, we have failed, and we have got more and more people alienated.
No,
I think first thing we have to deal with firmly.
So what's the option? Is it to restart the political dialogue? What is the option? What does the army, the army man can't do a dialogue. The army man has to respond with the gun. So what does the army man do if there is a political vacuum?
No, I agree with you totally. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not talking only of the army, but I'm talking of the whole strategy for it. We have permitted these ideologues to continue the kind of thing that they have been doing without checking them at all, anything on the ground. Now, as far as the stone pelters are concerned, I think in order to deal with the situation, we have to be firm. There is no getting away with it. Anybody who comes in the way of the proper functioning, legitimate functioning of the army, well, they have to be dealt with. So I'm quite firm on that whether they are stone pelters or whatever they do, if they come in the way of the functioning of the army, they have to be dealt with properly.
Is there though a sense, Ajay Shukla, that the army is now caught in the crossfire? The political class is unable to really resolve the vacuum that exists in the valley. And on the other hand, you've got a situation where the terrorists are more emboldened from across the border, and you've got an alienated population on the ground, many of whom could be working for the other side. The army is caught in the crossfire. That's what's making these camps such soft targets, some would say.
Rajdeep, the army, when it comes in confrontation with a group of terrorists, it is caught in a political situation that is not of its making. I think that there is a singular lack of clarity in seeing this Kashmir situation. When you talk to somebody like Sambit Patra or another BJP spokesperson, they will say that we are not going to negotiate from a position of weakness. This is a Pakistani-sponsored insurgency, and we are not going to let it go, and we are not going to have a dialogue until this kind of situation it comes under control. Now, are they saying that everything that is happening on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir is of Pakistan's making? Because if they are saying that, they are saying something very dangerous. They are saying India has no leverage in Kashmir. India has no ability to mold the situation on the ground. What I am putting forward to you is that there are two distinct situations in Kashmir, or two distinct parts of that situation. One is what Pakistan is interfering with, infiltration of terrorists and militants, is fomenting camps, financing insurgent groups in India and so on. But there's another entirely Indian dimension to it, and that is the alienation of the Kashmiri people. Why are we saying that until we deal with Pakistan, we will not deal with the alienation of the Kashmiri people either?
That's because the so-called
case to be made.
That's because the so-called Doval doctrine doesn't seem to have, I know it's not an official doctrine, that doesn't seem to have space at the moment for dialogue. Dialogue is not part of that doctrine. That doctrine is zero tolerance.
Rajdeep, let me tell you that this Doval doctrine, if it exists, it's a load of hogwash and needs to be jettisoned right now. It needs to be done away with if it exists at all, and nobody has acknowledged it. What needs to be done is to clearly demarcate what we can affect on the ground in Kashmir, which is the Kashmiri people, the attitude, the alienation, the need for dialogue, and what we can deal with only with Pakistan, which can be dealt with across the point of the gun.
I take your point. Sambit Patra, that's the key.
Things up, because then what we are saying
that's
is
the key. We now have a situation, no dialogue with Pakistan, isolate Pakistan on the one hand, but you are also isolating the Kashmiris. Kashmiris are feeling isolated. It's one thing to isolate Pakistan, but what about, how can you isolate Kashmiris and then expect any kind of public support on the ground? The support is going instead, sadly, I must say, to people from across the border.
Precisely.
Allow me some time to answer, because all the questions were directed to the government. Number one, when you say that we are alienating the Kashmiris and we have isolated the Kashmiris, it is an unfounded statement. If the Prime Minister spends his first Diwali somewhere, it's in Kashmir. If there is a flood situation and the Prime Minister directs all his concern towards, it is Kashmir. If a package is rightfully given, it is the due of the Kashmiris, the package reaches them, the 80,000 crore rupees package, and added 19,000 crore rupees only recently, it reaches Kashmir. So Kashmir is in the radar of Prime Minister's concern. Number two, the word alienation has appeared number of times. Even General Malik spoke about alienation. Others also spoke about alienation of Kashmiris, to which very respectfully and humbly I disagree. Because if alienation was the reason for stone pelting, then Kashmiri Pandits would have been throwing the Mount Everest. It is not alienation, my dear friend. We have to know what the real problem is, and none of us on the panel today have acknowledged what the real problem is.
What is the real problem?
Now let me articulate what the real problem is. The real problem is, I'm articulating that, the real problem is radicalization of Islam, Wahhabization of Islam in Jammu and Kashmir. And the biggest example is the video which was released of Musa, Zakir Musa, the successor of Burhan Wani. What did he say? He says, addressing the youth of Kashmir, don't pick up the stone and pelt the stone just because you want your watan or freedom. No, pick up the stone because in the name of Allah, you have to fight a war of jihad against the kafirs, and you have to create a caliphate. Remember, my dear friends, until and unless we know what the real problem is, just skirting around the problem will never solve the problem. And I ask one question to all my opponents.
Yes.
What is the political solution? What is the political solution that you all are talking about?
You raised that question. Let me give them in conclusion then to respond to that. You have thrown the question, what is the political solution? You start, Manish Tiwari. What is the political solution? According to Sambit Patra, you're facing radical Islam. This is not a normal Kashmir stone pelter. This is someone who is driven by jihad.
Well, Rajdeep, it's extremely unfortunate that Sambit has come to that very binary conclusion, because the same Kashmiri people in 2014, when the election takes place, the poll percentage is 65%. And in 2017, when a by-election takes place, it comes down to 7%. You know, when a repoll is ordered, it is 2%. You know, what were fringe voices in Kashmir? How come they've become mainstream voices? You know, that's really the worry. That's the alienation which the government needs to address. And so therefore, coming to the solution, obviously in 20 seconds you can't find a solution to Kashmir, but a starting point would be to have a full spectrum engagement with all the stakeholders in Kashmir. They have a PDP, BJP government out there. They have MLAs in every constituency. Obviously, the MLAs are not being able to reach out to the people, and that is why you have a situation on the ground which is almost anarchic, for the lack of a better word. So under those circumstances, listen to your own chief minister. Listen to the leader of the PDP, who says that let's pick up the threads of a dialogue and let's have a full spectrum dialogue. We are not saying this. This is exactly what their alliance partner is saying.
Let me leave it there, because clearly I think what we started off by looking at the attack on the terror camp, but we've come to the point which I think General Malik set us off with, the political vacuum that exists. Terrorists thrive in conditions of a political vacuum. No amount of surgical strikes alone will be enough unless the political questions underlying them are addressed. I appreciate my panelists joining me tonight on the top of the news today. Yet another attack on an army camp in Kashmir. More jawans killed. In the era of the Fidayeens, it may be impossible to stop terrorism. But surely more questions need to be asked as to why the camps have become soft targets. A confused Pakistan and Kashmir policy haven't helped matters. The Modi government has been pushed on the back foot on internal security. Surgical strikes in September clearly haven't been a deterrent. As the government goes back to the drawing board, a political engagement is critical. Let me also ask a simple question. Why doesn't the country have a 24/7 full-time defense minister for more than a month now?